Okay, so I will call the May 20th Norfolk School Building Committee meeting to order. So first on the agenda tonight is review and approval of the minutes for May 6th. Assuming everybody read them in the evening time. Can I get a motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion required? No, we missed you. I know, I was like, I can't. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. So I think the only other thing we have on the agenda, I know, looking at it, is the design update from AI3. So, Ingrid, unless you have anything you want to
Nope, I think that's good.
So, good evening, everyone. Justin Tebow with AI3. I think tonight's conversation is going to be shorter than the last meetings. It's really an update based upon the comments in the previous conversations. So, just want to lay out the four options. The one all the way on the left is the previous feasibility study that was completed a year or so ago, the brick and mortar option, and then options 1, 2, and 3 related to the modular configurations. There's 3 different configurations, whether it be 2 stories, whether it be 1 story, and where it's located on the site. So again, the brick and mortar option, direct interior connection, it's located on the service road, and it's basically connected with 2 wings. What's included in the project? This remains the same as what was previously discussed. So first floor of the expansion project, the pre-K component, all of the special education support spaces for the administration presence, as well as some items in green that are adjustments within the existing entity based on rebalancing some of the programs for full access. Second floor is the elementary school components, so the classrooms, the science lab, collaboration space. That really makes up that second floor component, as well as an art classroom. And then the items in green, again, are reworked and repurposed for equal distribution to provide services for students globally at an equal spot. Site plan, exactly where I mentioned, connecting the 2 wings, closing the courtyard here, and then the parking component for pre-K out on that lower level of the field out back there. Moving into the modular options. So option 1 is the 2-story option. It is in close proximity to the existing wings out the back over here. And again, there's a specific slide on this related to that connection and what it could be or couldn't be. But this is the most apples to apples comparison with that brick and mortar option. So floor plans, we went through these last time, but again, it's the same configuration and type of configuration as pre-K and special education on the first floor. Second floor is made up of the elementary school classrooms as well. There have been some updates primarily related to the second floor elementary school component. Because the building is actually separated, it was discussed that it should be treated as almost a standalone grade, could be supported out there. Previously, art was out there, science lab was out there, and that means, every single student would have to move over there for art and then come back and forth. So the intent of this configuration for option 1, as well as options 2 and 3, all the modular options, is that art would stay here, shared programs would stay within the existing building. So art would stay here, the science lab would be converted back to a science lab, and really what would consist within the modulars is a grade level support. So 8 classrooms, 2 large special education spaces, an ELL classroom, a smaller teacher planning space with a conference space, as well as 2 special education offices, whether it be for reading and writing or for or reading and math rather, and then a mental health office to support, again, that grade level as a whole.
I can speak to that a little bit. So at our last meeting, when we originally were looking at the modular study, we were just looking at what would the price be of the brick and mortar solution in a modular fashion. What we had talked about was it wasn't realistic to keep the same structures. If we have the art science lab and the building isn't physically connected to this building, it makes everybody traveling, putting on winter coats, traveling back and forth. So we wanted to make sure that we were pricing and estimating this in a realistic build, like what it would really have to have if we're going to build as is. So we had conversations with the administrative team, with the special education office, and as we talked about at the last meeting, we talked about putting all of the 8 grade level classrooms we're projected to have in the modular, and then we talked about from an equity and a civil rights standpoint, those students couldn't have to just put all their snow gear on and everything to come in to receive special education service. That would be a civil rights violation. So we needed to make sure, looking at the grade level, what additional spaces. Originally, it had 1 specialized special education classroom. We know based on the population, we'd need at least 2. So we put a second classroom in there, and we transitioned some of the office spaces to small group pull-out instruction so that reading and math service, so everything could be delivered the way it is for a grade level here in the existing structure. That said, the art room, the gymnasium, the art room, the science lab, and the makerspace would remain in the existing building. So students in that grade level would have to come into the building to access those specialized supports.
And just coincidentally, based upon all of those shifts, primarily within this zone up here, that's where the art, the science lab, etc. were. With the programs that were removed and the programs that were added in, it's the exact same footprint. So that square footage number, 35,642, remains the same, but it's just shifting some of the components, again, to fully support a single grade out on the modulars. So that's the big shift with all of these. Again, option 1, site plan, footprint stays the same, access stays the same. This is, again, the apples to apples comparison, trying to get it close to the existing, and it's built primarily on the access road over there. Option 2, 2-story option, the L configuration, further away, trying to avoid that access road and those existing utilities. The adjustments on this floor, or this option, is primarily related to floor 2. Again, same types of spaces. Moving out art and science, moving in the additional classrooms and support spaces, again, to fully support. Size stayed the exact same as well. It was just swapping programmatic elements. Site plan remains the same as well. Again, with that parking area being created within the middle to separate over the existing utilities.
And can you just point out where the walkway is again?
Yep, so the walkway is proposed to be located up here across the top. That way it would avoid students walking through either a drive aisle or the parking area. And you can see back here on floor plans, first floor is on the left. This would be slated for the elementary school entrance, so they could enter the stairs right there. We added a door to block off the pre-K component, so they could utilize that elevator right there or the adjacent stairs that they're walking into to circulate vertically right up to the second floor here within their classroom wing, as you will.
How long is the walkway? Right, I know we keep talking about
That
the
right
first floor option being a very long walk, but this also seems like a pretty long walk.
You're talking about that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it looks.
You're looking at a couple hundred feet.
Yeah.
Just thinking that road is drawn roughly, roads typically, if it's a 2-way, it's 24 feet wide. So if you scale that, I mean, I know it's
It's a good little walk.
Yeah. We have a scale right there. Yeah, no, there we go. Silly question, sorry.
Yeah,
Couple hundred
between
feet, actually.
150 and 200 feet.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, from leaving the building to getting into that.
Right,
new-
it's a more closed walk, I guess, because it's not out front, but
Right.
it's still
It's-
a walk.
Exactly. And then third option is the single story. Footprint doubles because we're only going 1 story tall. It's located on the fields. Configuration footprint stayed the same. Again, it's swapping out those program elements to fully support a grade level within it. And this one is 35,828 square feet, just based upon the modular units. And the site plan would remain the same as well because the program adjustments were just within the elementary school component, so the general organization remained the same.
So Are you able to put an awning over the walkways that doesn't connect to the building?
Did you see the building, the slides?
No, we talked about it a few.
Yeah, we did.
couple
I
months
do
ago.
have a specific slide.
Oh, you do?
talking about
Sorry.
What type of connections we can do. Yeah.
But I didn't.
So we will absolutely get there. Before we move forward, though, wanted to just check to see if there's any other thoughts or updates based upon the modulars themselves.
I just have
You did incorporate the lockers.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yep. 160 lockers.
For the permanent building.
Yep.
I'm assuming that it would just be a circular, the kids could walk around
On the second floor, yes.
second
Yeah,
floor,
because
not
it
on the
would serve
first
the
floor.
same student population. First floor, there would be doors because it's the pre-K component.
Okay.
So there would be doors, but there would be card access. So that way, staff and administration could go back and forth if needed, but the student walking through couldn't access the pre-K component.
Yep, okay. And then for the modular options, would there just be a singular entrance and exit? Or would there be multiple potential
This one. In and out of the building.
in and out of this building?
This building, so we would still utilize, sort of can't really see, well, actually, I'll go to this slide, but right here and right here are your stairs.
Okay.
Just fix this and go ahead a bunch. These are the existing plans. So we would utilize your current stairs and egress points.
Yep.
That's where the students would leave. And then they would walk, and you'll see shortly that as close as we can get, there's two options. One of them is 10 feet away, the other one is building a firewall. So
Okay.
we'll get more into that. But the intent would be to utilize the existing doors for this building here.
Okay, sounds good.
And they're taking questions from?
Yes, I can take a question.
I'm sorry, how many recesses do they have?
Students have one.
Just one recess?
Yeah.
So
Kindergarten
they-
has two, but they'll be
They
in.
cross into that building for one recess and lunch?
Lunch, yes.
And then again for their session?
Yes,
Thank you.
although we would probably structure the schedule so that they would have specials and lunch together as best possible. So they'd come in, go to lunch, and then go to special or vice versa.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think I know the answer to this, but on the singular story option, there's also a door that, what?
Yes.
Okay, I just,
Yep, yeah, there's a series of doors down here, so it's still utilizing the special education.
okay, but they're
component
still
as
separate even though
administration.
it's,
Exactly, yep. Yep. Yeah, so pre-K would be on the left, elementary school would be basically here to the right. So, and they would utilize different access doors, et cetera.
Could we see the slide again with the true satellite building, the one that's often, the one that's on the field?
The single level.
The single level in the field. Could we?
That one? That version?
Yeah, so then that walk to the building
Yeah, it's
would
about the
be,
same.
is it the same or is it, because they have
No,
to
it's
still
across
come
the
down?
oh, they have to go forward.
They have to
Oh,
come
yeah.
across, they have to come across and then come down to
Oh, yeah, they have to go around to the
doorway,
door.
right, to the
Yeah.
front? Okay.
Oh, yeah, because you
Corner
don't
to
enter
corner,
the
you're
gym.
250, and then like we mentioned last time, that's from this point here.
Okay.
If students actually
They have to
enter
come
down
down
here,
and into
it's
the
even
courtyard.
further.
You
Okay.
can kind of, when you go out front, it's the length of that field.
Well, I'll just take myself for a walk.
Yeah.
Beautiful day for that.
Yeah. Okay.
And we can always hop back to these as well. So one thing that we did want to confirm with the adjustments and the shifts within the modular classrooms, really containing one grade level over there, what scope of work is included in the current Freeman Kennedy? So what we've since identified is really two components. It's renovating and upgrading the art classroom to address the kiln venting issues, and then turning the science lab back into a science lab. As of right now, that is the scope of renovation within this building. So I want to just make sure that that is accurate and sort of the direction forward that we should be estimating.
I guess the question is, some of those efficiencies that we had talked about with the permanent building addition, moving people around so they're more centrally servicing the student population, that wouldn't really be feasible, I guess, if we had
Yeah,
some
I
of the
think-
detached options, right?
I think we would have to we'd have to relook at the internal space. There might be some classroom moves that we need to make because again, we centered specialized resource rooms according to the grade level wing, and if we're moving a whole wing out, we're moving some specialized programs out. But in terms of renovation work, it would be, we would need to fix, if the art room stays, we would have to vent the kiln. We would have to reset up the science lab so we have a science lab space. The other moves weren't necessarily involving renovations, some slight painting and things like that.
Just shifting?
very minor,
Okay.
yeah.
But we would need to, I think in the estimation for any of the modular options, we would need to fix these two things.
Right.
So that should be included in the price cost estimate.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as almost the linchpin to all of this, second floor, teacher collaboration space is right there, very small and undersized. In the permanent build, that moves over to the expansion, freeing up that space, allowing support services to move into that center core. That's one example of some of those. So,
Okay.
And I
yeah,
think when we do the estimates and we look at each model and beyond just the cost, the educational impact, that will leave us with the art room where it is, the makerspace not in a central place, lacking a teacher room. So there are certainly challenges that we would have to consider when this committee starts to make our recommendation. But for the purpose of estimation and cost, I think those are the only two renovation pieces that would have to be.
Are we still considering the soft, no, how like, last time I looked at the soft cost, I think we called them, is since we're doing the renovation, there was a couple upgrades that needed. Is that also being put as a separate
meaning
item?
like the fire alarm.
The chillers.
So
yeah.
that list of 4 items.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can price those separately because that was
Alt. It's
for the
considered alt
existing
bid.
building, so we
But
can
they're
have
not
those
priced
repriced as part of the
articles.
actual.
Yeah.
bid.
Just
Okay.
standalone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because if you recall, we're also going to have the permanent build re-estimated because it's a year or so later. It's more than a year later, so escalation and everything else. So just to make sure it truly is apples to apples across pricing.
And I think as we talked about the last time, those were priced separately as like a bid alt. And if we do modulars, we still have to do those, but those would be priced separately. They really shouldn't be part of any of the buildings because they're optional for the town. They're not part of the building costs. They're really maintenance and capital items in this existing structure that have to be addressed no matter what you do for future growth. So they'll be held in, like you priced them separately
Right. Yep.
before.
Yeah, that way this group can see what is the actual
Yeah.
cost of doing it rather than just embedding it within the building itself.
But I do think it's important that they're separate because when we hear, like I think you talked about, Madore, when you hear around town people talking about the price of the building, they get folded in. They're almost $10 million
Folded in
of
and increased by
other
30%.
costs,
Yeah.
and they're really not related to the expansion project. They're related to the fact that this building's coming up on being almost 15 years old. They're end of life expectancy and require replacement. So we just don't want them folded in.
But I think for like the reason, just for clarifying purposes, the reason we kind of did even mention them together is because we're trying to capitalize and save some money, that if we have certain equipment on site,
Yes.
it makes
Right.
sense just
To do it all at once.
To do it all at
Contractors
once,
are
yeah.
already here, they're already tying into the systems, they're already in it. So that is
Yep.
the most economical way to do
Right.
it, absolutely. Yep.
Given that, would that change the estimate for those 4 things if we went for a modular option?
It wouldn't change that much because it's going to be similar, it's the same contractor.
Okay.
It's just whether they're in the mods or whether
Yeah.
they're in here, and at some point, they're still going to have to tie in to certain systems,
Okay.
whether it's a detached building or not. So,
And the
yeah,
equipment
it
will still be
shouldn't
here,
swing it
right?
that much. Yeah, I know. Okay, so is that the green light to estimate these options?
Can we look at the connections first?
Yep.
Because we want that built into the estimate,
Yeah,
right?
so the thought for the connections, and I'm going to try not to go down a rabbit hole of building code.
We're going, yeah.
By any means, but I'm more than happy to if somebody would like to. We've been talking about building connections and what ultimately that means and what we can and we can't do. Super high level conversation here. The existing building, and this is only pertains to option 1 because it's the only option close enough that it makes sense to actually connect in. So the existing building is type 2B construction. That means that it is not combustible. It's made out of materials that it's not like stick-built wood like your house. Also, it has 0-hour rating on all of the structure. Like those round columns right there are not fire rated. There are many different types of ratings. There are many different types of buildings. That is how this building was designed. Based on those two limiting factors of non-combustibility and 0-hour rating, it gives you how much or how big a footprint you can actually have for a building. So with those two factors, you're limited to about 50,000 square feet per floor. This building is bigger than that. So what the previous architect did was actually split this building into 3 pieces by the use of a firewall. One right there running beside those stairs, one right there running beside those stairs. So in reality, you have one building here, your long linear, what we're in now, and then your 2 wings are actually technically from a code perspective 2 separate buildings. So this is 3 buildings built right onto each other. With that firewall, that allows you to do that because it's a rated wall that separates those buildings from a life safety issue. Reason why I say that is one of the options is to build firewalls out the back. That gets a little bit tricky though, because the modulars are combustible and they're not rated, so that limits the square footage. So what would have to happen is you would have to build a 2-hour wall that is fully supported on both sides. And what I mean by that is, say you all are in the modulars, I'm in the existing, and there's a firewall right here. If the fire's on this side, that wall cannot fall down, meaning this can't be the only side that supports it, and vice versa. So this wall has to be fully supported on both sides to prevent it falling down in the event of a fire. Those get expensive. There are provisions to them. They have to go the entire width of the connection and 30 inches above the roof. And what that does is that it separates the building. So in reality, if that was the route that this project goes, this would be now 4 buildings. 1, 2, 3, and then the connector would be number 4. Based on those limitations, you also need to provide a safe means of egress. It snowballs, and it can get very expensive from those 2 almost knuckle connection points. So that is one option. The other option is you can put it 10 feet away. You can actually build a canopy, but the canopy has to be 1 hour rated. It can only be a canopy. You can't have walls on the side of it because then it's considered a building. It's enclosed. So the photos here, this is an example of what we've seen on other projects. Canopy made out of fire-treated wood, 1 hour rating, but it's open on the sides. They put a door and a fence, basically. I mean, you can even see through the doors over here. To start separating it, that is what we would end up doing to keep people out of this courtyard. So that type of wall would be on the outside, still allowing students and staff to circulate behind those doors, allowing egress out, but not allowing anybody to just walk into the courtyard.
So it would be like a fenced canopy, almost like I feel like where you see like prisoner transfers happening. Like, and I don't mean
Yes.
that, like,
Yeah.
I just mean like that's
Yep.
the only time I've ever seen something like that, like
Yeah.
enclosed. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be a wall on the outside of your circulation path, 10 feet long, and there'd have to be doors in it to allow egress out in the event of an emergency, but you could only go out, not in. And the wall couldn't be all the way up because you can't fully enclose to the roof, and it would only be on one side because you can't fully enclose it.
When you say you can't fully enclose it, does that include, for instance, like if it was rainy or winter weather, like a plastic roll down? Not that,
Nope.
even that
Nope,
is
because
counts.
it needs to be 1 hour rated, so,
And that would burn. Yeah.
exactly. So, in reality.
And the wall that you're talking about has to have an egress, so it has to
Yes.
have doors, so it doesn't provide like a fence protection that kids aren't going to exit through it, because it
Right.
has to exit out.
You have to
And it has
always
to be
allow
unlocked.
safe egress. Because if you don't have those doors, you create a landlocked situation in
Right.
your courtyard that if there was an event, fire, emergency, etc.
Any kind of event, yes.
You could not get out. So from a building code standpoint, you need to have egress capability. So you, to your point, Superintendent, you could not block those doors from allowing people out. But coming in, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
One-way doors, basically.
Right.
But out, no. you
So
can't.
a kid could just book it.
So it needs to be the same,
Yes.
same conversation
Yes.
we had last
Yes.
time about if we have those covered walkways, kids cannot go to the nurse without an escort.
Right,
They
right,
will
right,
have to
right.
go with an adult that walks out and buzzes them into the building, waits to escort them back. We can't send, like, in the building, a sixth grader can go down to the nurse or back or go down to the office to get
Because they
something.
can't just leave.
Right. We would not have that capacity. Now, the preschool's standalone, so it doesn't matter. Like, preschool kids aren't going to be coming in and out. They have their own nurses station and everything. But that one grade level that will be up there will have to transition in and out for specials, lunch, daily, and for recess. But they will also not have the independence to be able to go into the nurse or if it's not connected. And that's why I had asked Justin, I think we need to price out, even if it's more expensive, putting a firewall, and what could we do to create a sheltered access?
Right.
Because I think realistically, that presents a lot of challenges through
Even
the
going
day.
to the nurse,
If
like,
a child's sick or anything like that, it's
Dismissal.
just challenging.
The early dismissal.
Early
yeah.
dismissal, somebody would have to escort a child, because again, you can't keep that contained, and it's
Right.
not, it's a safety risk of having a kid walk out of a building unsupervised outside to a locked building.
Well, sorry, am I misunderstanding? Isn't it the same as a kid walking out that emergency door right over there?
They wouldn't be leaving the footprint of the building. They would be inside. So I don't think we could have a sixth grader exit the
Like if they
building,
open
be
that door,
outside.
wouldn't it be wired for like an alarm or something?
You could do that, but again, to come back in, they won't have key access.
Oh, okay,
They
so
would
you're
have to have
saying the
somebody come
actual
in, key
door-to-door.
them in,
Yeah.
let them into the
Yeah,
building.
and you
They
can't just give
couldn't
them like
do
a hall
that.
pass key or something
We
like
couldn't
that.
give a kid
Yeah.
a key pass to the
Yeah.
building, no. Yeah.
And to,
That
to
would
your
be bad.
point, though, those egress doors, the code required doors, you need to allow free egress, but they could be on an alarm. You could have
Well,
signs
that's what I'm saying,
on
like the-
them
like
and
I'm
everything
saying,
else.
yeah.
But you can't prevent them from leaving.
Sure.
That's,
But you also can't, I mean.
And we
again, I'm
can't
just worried
let,
that you
they
prevent
won't have
them from
access
there.
into this building without, because
Right.
those, all our exterior doors are locked at all
Mm-hmm.
times. And they're keypad, key coded.
So the thought is, because of these two different scenarios, again, there are concerns, and with both of these, what we can do is we could price up what the ad would be for that firewall to give you all a sense of what it would be.
Yeah, I think that's realistic, because then it also shows, like, even if you're saving money on the actual physical construction of the modular, by the time you get done with the firewall and all this other stuff, all of a sudden the price maybe gets a little closer
Close.
to, yeah.
I feel really strongly, like, we're looking at pricing these things. We still have to have deep conversations about the instructional impact, the learning time, how that would flow. I don't want to price something that's not realistic. So I think we really have to think about what the connections would look like and what would be safe before we price this out. Because I don't want it to be, all right, we're going to go with this, and then find out there's all these hidden costs that we didn't really account for. So I feel like we should be pricing out the firewall, because having a direct connection to the building would be much more feasible from an implementation and educational standpoint. Plus, we'll save learning time. Kids aren't going to have to put up on their snowsuits to go to lunch. So I think that's the most realistic, and I think it's worth pricing that. Again, we wouldn't be well served by saying, all right, this is going to be $10,000, and I'm not $10,000, but $10 million cheaper. But then all of a sudden we figure out, well, we have to put this in and this in and this in. And in the end, the town ends up with something.
Or we need to just
Close in cost,
if
it's
we
not
need
the
to
same.
lengthen the school day. I mean, like that. I think I agree 100% that we should price everything out. But I want it to be cost effective. I want it to be safe. I want it to be logistically feasible.
That's right.
That's and all I can think of is it's just the
It's hard.
time that's lost throughout the course of the day already, because like my kid, when she's going from lunch back to wherever she's going, gets distracted by something on the wall and wants to stop and look at it. Like, there's a lot of distractions if you start including a snowsuit and a trip outside and all sorts of things. So the more efficient it can be, I think.
Now, one thing to note is that this is only for option one. The other options are, I guess theoretically you could do the canopy for the other options, but you're a 200-foot canopy out that side
protect you from
and a
much.
300 out that,
Yeah.
So we
I
will
think we
price
talked
this for
about
option
sun
one.
right now today. We talked at the last time about whether we wanted to eliminate option 3 because it also, we lose the full playfield. But I think the thought of the committee at the time was that was the only single story and we should at least get the estimate so we can weigh in consideration of that, the other challenges that that solution presents. I don't know if you still feel the same way or...
I think it's worthwhile to, I mean, if it's not that great of an increase in the pricing process, I mean, I'm the one that suggested eliminating it, but if it's not that big of a lift to
get a price.
To get a price, I think that's fine. It kind of, this is the universe of what we can do with a modular solution, right? Is essentially these 3 options, so we should see what those 3 options look like so that we're able to discuss those.
Well, and I think, listen, in the L-shaped configuration, that's a significant walk as well. It's shorter, but I think you have the similar argument, if it's an argument, right, that it's going to take a long time. Kids are going to have to be escorted. Right. So if we're doing this one, we should do that one too, just because it would be somewhat arbitrarily.
I mean, I think it's logical to price all 3. I mean, we're at the estimating part of this, and then we will have to, before we make a recommendation, we still have to think if there is any other viable solutions we should be exploring, and then the pros and cons of each before we finalize. So, as you said, if it's not significant to price them, we can price them. Those are, you guys looked at all possible locations within the school site that these could be housed that would fit the size building. So we would have explored all possible modular solutions.
That made sense from a financial, from an infrastructure, from, I mean, theoretically you could put it on the parking lot over here, but then you're gonna have to redo your entire septic leach field. Or you could put it over there, but then you gotta redo your utility loop because they're coming from the other side. Like there's, so the 3 locations here from our standpoint, from a logistics standpoint, from a lot of different elements, the infrastructure, it made sense from our perspective for these 3.
Jason, did you have a question?
Well, I don't want to get too down into staffing, but I don't know how often kids are escorted or would need an escort, but would that impact staffing? Like, is there enough staff to even escort children?
Well, I mean, we would have to...
Map it out.
I mean, like we said before, within the building, if a child is getting dismissed early, we can send them down to the nurse's office. You could have, if you have an assistant in the classroom, they might walk the child down, or a teacher might have to open the classroom door and say, can you watch the class for a minute while I run this child down? Like, it would have to be, we just can't let a child exit the building to go in. So, yeah, it would pull people. You would have to have, how often? I mean, we have 8 classrooms at each grade level. We dismiss kids regularly for appointments, so it would have an impact for that. Or sick, or, other things.
We need an usher.
Well, and potentially late, not just dismissal, but if you...
Late arrivals, somebody would have to come down to meet the child to let them into the building. So I really feel like the most viable of all of these would be the double 2-story modular in the back of the building if we can make a full connection to the school. And if that's significantly less, that would be the most workable, I think, of the 3.
And then in this option here, so if that bottom extension, would kids, if they had to go to the proposed modular area, would they be able to exit from that bottom extension? And then I guess they would just have to walk up, and then they would have to walk up to the crosswalk and then over?
So they would either have to go up and around or cut through the parking lot. Again, we would try to deter that because you're walking through parking, but that is there are students over there that would possibly utilize it, or there's programs over there. That's where the science lab is, for instance. So if grade 6 was in the mods, they're going to the science lab, they would have to sneak all the way down through.
Most of our classrooms have one teacher. Like, we don't have regular ed paraprofessionals, and usually if we have a special educator teacher or a special educator paraprofessional, they're there to support students, so essentially, like you said, if we needed to walk a student down, the teacher would have to leave the classroom, or if there's a paraprofessional there, she would have to stop the support that she's providing to walk a student down. So if it is pretty, like, that would be kind of the staff that we would have. There's nobody else, just, that would be available, so.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? This is what we'll price up.
Just one question.
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry, if you build the firewall to connect, then you can build a connecting hallway.
Yes.
Perfect.
The self-supporting 2-hour firewall, the whole, yeah.
Then we could have a fully, okay. That would be helpful, thank you. So you're looking for us to be in agreement that you can move forward with
Yes.
pricing for these 4?
Yep.
Sorry, you're going to price the with firewall option and without?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be a separate line item of what the upcharge
Okay.
will be for the firewall.
Do you want us to vote on it, or do
It's
you?
not marked for a vote, do we?
Yeah, it's marked for a vote, but we said we would give final feedback today,
Yeah.
and that it was ready for estimation. So if everybody's comfortable with the
I feel
final
comfortable.
feedback, I think.
Only other thing I had, so we'll fill in that with all the numbers. Next meeting, so what we have currently targeted is into June, because it will take some time to pull all the estimates together. Right now, we have it targeted for June 18th. Just want to make sure that that's still where.
Let's do it.
Sure, still works.
Do we have a school committee meeting that night, Ingrid, or are we not meeting in June?
That would be the 11th, so
Okay.
we should be okay for the 18th.
It's the day after school gets out, if anybody has traveled.
I'm leaving the next day.
Okay.
And Justin, just to be clear,
Yeah.
so at the next meeting, we can expect that we will have price estimates for all of the modular solutions, the 3 different locations, and 2 price points for each.
Yep.
So a basic and a higher level construction,
Yep.
plus a separate price for the knee wall.
Yes.
Will we have the re-estimation of the original brick and mortar too?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the re-estimation of all the alts?
Yes, yeah, at the next meeting, there should be all of that in a matrix on the screen
Okay.
for that. So
Okay,
unless if anything like seriously goes wrong, yes, that's what we're on schedule to do.
great.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Any questions for Justin, or?
Approximately how long would you, what's the shelf life of those estimates? Knowing that we're now past a year and needing to re-estimate, would you, I mean, 6 months, is that?
Yeah, I would say that's appropriate. They will escalate to start of construction, and that will be identified. And as long as that really doesn't change, I'd say, yeah, 6 months should be. So, because, yeah, anything further, they constantly reevaluate based on the market trend. So I'd say 6 months.
And would all 3 of those options have the same lifespan or estimated lifespan? No.
Yeah, so within those 3 options, there's the 2 levels of quality.
Yep.
The upper level of quality in any of the options would have the same lifespan. The lower level of quality would have the same lifespan.
Okay.
It really comes down to materials of what's
Yep.
used.
But would the lower level of quality have a shorter lifespan than the higher level of quality?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And the
Okay,
higher
guys.
level would have equivalent to the brick and mortar, or the brick
No.
and mortar? No, that's, yeah, I think, is that what, yeah.
No, I thought you were asking about the different modular types, so I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
I
You're
was,
talking about
but-
like a single story versus a 2-story. Does the single story have a longer shelf life, usable life than?
And I guess
two-story.
the version with, the 2-hour firewall, does that have a shorter lifespan because of that firewall?
Yeah, no, the firewall is permanently built. It's legitimate. You're beyond modulars in that your full foundations, you need a structure to fully support it. It's a
Yeah.
Firewall
It's a
will
thing.
outlive the modular.
yes, yes,
real thing?
which
Yeah,
that's what it's
okay.
intended to do. Yes, absolutely, yes.
And the 2, just in case anybody didn't see the last meeting and is watching from home, can you just review the quickly, high level, the difference in materials between price point 1 and price point 2?
Yep, price point 1 and price point 2. So for instance, it would be wall finishes, whether in the bathrooms and corridor, whether it's tile or whether it's like a vinyl covering. Flooring surfaces would vary as well, whether it's a VCT or an LVT. The actual mechanical systems would vary
depending on which level it is. One would be air source heat pumps, the other would be through-wall units that you'd see, think of like a hotel room, for instance. Siding would be different. Lower level would be texture 111, so the groove plywood, versus the upper level would be fiber cement siding, like a Hardy. That's a brand name. Windows would be different as well. One would be vinyl windows versus aluminum windows. So those are some of the differences.
And foundation.
Foundations, yes. The lower level would be on piers. The upper level would be on a foundation wall.
Is there an air thing too that you mentioned last time?
Is there what? Sorry.
An air, HVAC, like the air, is there a difference between the two?
So there is a difference. They would still meet code, but it's just the types of systems that use, whether the upper level would be an air source heat pump, so it's more efficient, and the lower level are the units, the through-wall units that would be in each classroom, typically a little bit noisier than units that are on the roof. So,
And also in general, the like efficiency would be less than like a whole building unit.
absolutely.
I'm just reiterating that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Like the cost to operate the modular would
the
probably.
operating costs would be significantly higher for the modulars. The windows aren't as good, the wall insulation, just the whole building envelope, the thermal envelope is not what it would be for a permanent build with it.
Are you going to include the lifespan in this final report so we can see like the number and how long it takes? Because if we.
Or a range.
Or, yeah, a range. Yeah, not obviously barring anything unforeseen,
Yeah.
but what we can generally expect out of it, just because I think that's going to be important.
Yeah,
if
we can provide a range. Ultimately, it comes down to maintenance, though.
Right, and I'm obviously
Yep.
seen them stay up forever in some towns and.
Yep.
But
But
if
a
we want to be
general range for
responsible.
life expectancy
Yeah.
of the materials would be helpful.
And just because if the life expectancy is 10 years, and then we're going to say, okay, well, in 10 years, they're going to be falling apart, and we're going to have to go back to the, that would be
Yeah.
helpful.
And also, would it be possible to provide like an annual operating cost for the various options?
Not at this early stage.
Oh, okay.
That's something where we would have to do energy models, and that takes a large amount of time.
Okay. All right.
You also talked about the green footprint that the different modules have. So the one that's closest has the least of a footprint, right? Because of the location, am I?
I think it's more of the configuration. Actually, let's just go to.
Physical footprint.
It's the most efficient because it is just a straight. Let's go to the summary. It's a straight linear
Yeah.
component, so that is the most efficient. Once you start going around corners, you lose some in corner circulation. They're all actually pretty close to one another. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, the delta is only like 500 square feet difference, which on a 36,000 square foot building they're the same, essentially. But the reason why some of these, like the L configuration is jogging, as well as the one on the field, is just to physically fit within some of the site constraints. The L configuration is property lines, and then the single-story version is to try to avoid some of that existing parking, just to avoid it for circulation, for cost, and to really just fit it. But they're all within like 500 square feet of each other, which is on each other.
But from an energy standpoint, the straight one is the most efficient, and
Yes.
the one in the courts, because of the two corners and the turns, is going to
Yep.
be the least efficient.
Yep, absolutely.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I think
Sorry,
that's-
thank you, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's the smaller amount of exterior envelope. That's windows, walls. That's where you lose heat. So, yep.
Thank you.
All right. Any other
That's all we have for
questions?
tonight, because we want to come back together and take one more look at the layout before we went forward with estimating. So I think that's all we had on the agenda for tonight.
All right. Well then, if nobody has anything else they want to say, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.